The Last Kingdom Season 1 begins in 866 up in Bebbanburg, Northumbria. The Lord of Bebbanburg was Uhtred, son of Uhtred, but not for much longer. When the Danes arrived, King Uhtred told his son Uhtred to ride out and watch them, but to not fight. Nevertheless, he fought and lost. Earl Ragnar rode up to Bebbanburg with young Uhtred's head. The king's younger son named Osbert was renamed as Uhtred and then rebaptized. Osbert rose as Uhtred, son of Uhtred, heir to Bebbanburg. King Uhtred told his brother Elfrich to man the fort while he rode out to fight the Danes with other Northumbrian forces. Unfortunately, they were tricked. They lost the battle and King Uhtred was killed. Earl Ragnar took young Uhtred in as a slave and Uhtred became friends with Earl Ragnar's daughter, Tura. One time, Sven assaulted Tura and Uhtred fought for her honor. When Earl Ragnar found out the truth, he stabbed one of young Sven's eyes and banished Sven's father, Kjartan. Ragnar also told Uhtred that he was proud of him. Kjartan told Uhtred's uncle Elfrich that Uhtred was still alive, so Elfrich attempted to ransom Uhtred from Ubba, the de facto leader of the Danes. Elfrich's plan was to buy Uhtred and kill him, but Earl Ragnar decided to buy Uhtred instead.
Does this mean I'm a Dane?
It means you're Uhtred Ragnarsson. You're a son to me now.
Years later, Uhtred was grown up and still living amongst Ragnar's people. Ragnar told Uhtred that he should marry Brida and encouraged Uhtred to find Brida that night doing some pagan stuff in the woods, and that turned out to be very lucky. Uhtred and Brida hopped on the good foot and did the bad thing. Afterwards, they saw Kjartan slaughtering everyone except for Tura. The next morning, Uhtred saw his uncle's man there, so he recklessly snuck over, killed him, and rode up to Bebbanburg to show his uncle Elfrich that he, Uhtred of Bebbanburg, was still alive.
I am Uhtred of Bebbanburg, and I shall take what is mine. Bebbanburg's mine!
Uhtred and Brida fled from Elfrich's men and found out that the rumor going around was that Uhtred had killed Earl Ragnar. So they rode all the way down to East Anglia, and Uhtred told Ubba the truth. Ubba did not believe him, but Ubba spared Uhtred's life since Brida was holding Ubba's sorcerer as a hostage. Uhtred and Brida stopped off in Oxford, Mercia, where Uhtred paid a smith to forge his sword, Serpent Breath. But Ubba's men found them, so they fought them off, then fled down to Winchester. Lo and behold, Beocca was there. Beocca introduced Uhtred to King Ethelred's brother, Alfred. The Saxons did not believe that the Danes were going to attack until spring, but Uhtred found sacrifices of jackdaws, which meant that the Danes would be attacking within days. Alfred didn't fully trust Uhtred, so he locked him and Brida up in a cage while they rode out to battle at Ashes Hill.
For Wessex! For England!
King Ethelred died of his wounds. The king's son Ethelwald was a drunk, so they kidnapped him and brought him to a monastery in Hampton. Meanwhile, the king's younger brother, Alfred, was raised a king.
My first act as king will be to offer the Danes a peace.
Alfred got Uhtred to commit to 1 year of service, but then young Ragnar showed up. Uhtred assured Ragnar that the rumors about him killing Earl Ragnar were a lie, so they hugged it out. Brida left with Ragnar, but Uhtred stayed behind so as to honor his 1 year of service oath. Alfred set Uhtred up with Mildred. They got married, and later, Uhtred found out that Mildred's father left her with a lot of debt. So in effect, Uhtred was tricked into being heavily indebted to the church.
Damn this church.
Lord,
and
I
damn
must
this
say,
God.
I do not like your
My
blasphemy.
name is
It is wrong.
Uhtred!
Eventually, Mildred got pregnant. Meanwhile, the Danes reformed an army and took over Wareham. Alfred got them to agree to a deal. They would give Guthrum some food and 1 month of peace for his boats to arrive, and then he was to sail back to East Anglia. To solidify the deal, they exchanged 10 hostages each, and Uhtred was one of those hostages. So Uhtred reconnected with Ragnar and Brida inside Wareham. But when Guthrum received word that Ubba had returned from Ireland, Guthrum figured that they'd be able to defeat Alfred, so he broke the deal, starting by killing his 10 hostages. Thankfully, Ragnar stepped in to save Uhtred, so Guthrum let Uhtred go free, and Uhtred lit the beacon fires so as to notify Alfred of Ubba's return. Alfred split his army into 2. He led half of his men to Holdenhurst to confront Guthrum. Meanwhile, Uhtred went up to Cynuit with Otta, young Otta, and Wulfhere to face off against Ubba. They received word of Guthrum's ships being destroyed in a storm, so Otta and Wulfhere were hesitant to attack Ubba. Instead, they were hoping that Alfred would meet them sometime soon so that they could attack Ubba together. But their supplies were running low, and Ubba knew this. Uhtred came up with a new plan. Uhtred would light Ubba's ships on fire so as to cause a distraction. Then, Otta's force could surprise attack Ubba's force. Young Otta tried to get his father to take advantage of the distraction and flee, but thankfully Otta honored his agreement with Uhtred. So down below, Uhtred fought the square against Ubba and killed him, and then Otta showed up just in time to save Uhtred's life. The Saxons won thanks to Uhtred's plan, but Otta was injured in the battle, and Uhtred foolishly went back to his wife so as to meet their child. That allowed young Otta to go to Alfred and claim victory himself. When Uhtred found out that young Otta had claimed the victory, he was pissed, so he busted in on Alfred and even unsheathed his sword. Because of this, Alfred made him do a crawl of shame. When Uhtred got back home, he caught Oswald stealing from him, so he killed Oswald and refused to pay Oswald's family, the Wergild. Uhtred's wife was upset, so Uhtred and the Ulfrics decided to head west to Cornwalum so as to raid for wealth. When they got there, Brother Asser told Uhtred that Britons had taken over King Peredur's fortress. Uhtred agreed to help take it back, but when they got there, Uhtred learned that it had not been taken over by Britons. It had been taken over by Danes. Uhtred made a new deal with the Danes, and they killed all the Britons except for King Peredur. The deal was to split Peredur's silver, but Skorpa turned his cloak and took it all, or so he thought. The Shadow Queen, Iseult, showed Uhtred where a second hoard of silver was hidden. Uhtred then returned to Wessex and gave Bishop Aelwald a cross to pay off his debts. Then, he returned to his home and found out that his wife had baptized their son against his will. Alfred summoned Uhtred to court, and Uhtred was accused of his crimes in Cornwalum, among other things that he did not do. Leofric confessed to that which they did do, but Leofric convinced Alfred to let him and Uhtred fight to the death. And the next day, Alfred gave Uhtred a way out of the sentence. Uhtred simply had to resume his debt and send Iseult back to Cornwalum. Uhtred refused to do that. Instead, he fought his friend Leofric to the death. Thankfully, it never came to that, since the fight was stopped short when the Danes attacked Winchester.
The fight is finished, Athelney! Come on, run!
Uhtred, Leofric, and Iseult hid in a house, and Iseult jumped down to save a nun named Hild. The four of them fled the city and went to the relative safety of the marshes. They killed some Danes to protect some priest, and lo and behold, one of the priests was actually King Alfred. Every day, Iseult gave Alfred an herbal drink to help him with his stomach cramps, and in doing so, she earned his trust. Therefore, Alfred let her perform a pagan ceremony so as to save his dying child's life, and it may have worked, because the next day, the baby Edward was healthy. Alfred wanted to rally his people and fight one last time to take back Wessex, but in order to do so, he needed to get Skorpa to join Guthrum. They achieved this by burning Skorpa's fleet. Then, they rode to Devon to rally the forces. On their way there, they came across Uhtred's home, and he discovered that his own baby was already dead and buried. Iseult told Uhtred that she no longer wanted to have the power to see the future that came along with being a virgin, so they hopped on the good foot and did the bad thing. Meanwhile, Otta the Younger attempted to make a deal with Skorpa, but then Uhtred and the Ulfrics showed up. They told everyone that Alfred was still alive, and not only was he alive, he had snuck into the hall behind them. As Otta the Younger besmirched Alfred, Otta noticed Alfred under his hood, so Otta walked up and killed his own treacherous son. Then they marched out to St. Egbert's Stone for the final battle. Alfred's forces got there first. While they waited, Ethelwald thought about killing his uncle King Alfred, as old Guthrum had told him to do, but in the end, Ethelwald held his dagger. Then the allies arrived. The unified Danes showed up as well, and the two armies went to war. The Ulfrics died during the battle, and Skorpa rode off, found Iseult, and gave her head to Uhtred. This caused him to rage. Uhtred recklessly jumped over the Dane's shield wall. Beocca threw him a spear, and he proceeded to throw it into Skorpa. The Saxons then broke through the gap in the Dane's shield wall, and during the madness, Uhtred killed the Saxon so as to protect his brother Ragnar. Ultimately, the Saxons won the day. Guthrum converted to Christianity, Ragnar and Breda were taken prisoner, and Iseult had told Uhtred that his sister Tura was still alive.
When this battle is done, Uhtred, your path leads north.
Destiny is all.
Horses!